Section 2 of Chapter 7, page 155. I'll continue reading.
Today's date.
July 5th, 2024. Overseas and abound.
Overseas and what?
Overseas and beyond. Overseas and beyond. I finally arrived back at camp at a little after 2:30 hours, several hours earlier than I time prescribed me on my furlough papers. The barracks looked unfamiliar and depressing, for there were many rolled-up mattresses on the empty bunks and not too many people sleeping in the occupied ones. I threw my overnight bag on my bunk, unrolling the mattress, and started to undress to take a shower. As I looked around, I saw that the rifle racks in the middle of the barracks were gone. I thought that was odd and only hoped that we would not ship out in the next several days. After showering and brushing my teeth, I lay on my bunk thinking about a better way to try to stay awake rather than fall asleep for a short period, as reveille would be in a few short hours. Instead, I fell asleep only to be awakened in a short time by the voices and the trampling feet on a wooden floor. Larson was smiling and telling me to get up. The furlough was over and it was time to get back to soldiering. He quickly filled me in. We were due to ship out in several weeks, and the advance party had already left. Nobody knew where we were going, Europe or South Pacific, but the rumor was fairly convincing that we'd be heading to the ETO, European Theater of Operations. I felt relieved at the prospect of going to the ETO, and then quickly asked where everyone else was. He told me that many people had left, and he had begun to name a few. Sergeant Baker was transferred to field artillery, and I was glad to hear that. Fink was a new squad leader, and incidentally, I had promised a promotion to be first gunner. As Fink had been the third squad, Lape had been transferred from the second platoon to my assistant gunner. Fortunately, Spotska and Gaffney were transferred to a provisional company. A provisional company is Army's avenue of last resort for problem soldiers. They eventually wound up as replacements in an outfit which were the worst way to go overseas. I was relieved that we had gotten rid of the two of them, and I wished them good luck in their new assignments. They would certainly need it in all where they're going. Larson said Gorky had been admitted to the hospital for some unknown reasons, and no visitors were allowed. He would not go overseas. Incidentally, afterthought, I found out later that Gorky was seeing a girl in Owensboro whom he eventually married while in the hospital. He later shipped out after recovering from overseas a few months later, but in a different outfit from ours. Also, Captain Goodnight had been transferred out, and most of his other officers. In his place was Captain Jeward, an ex-history teacher who was almost as much older as Goodnight. Our platoon leader was also gone. Instead, we had Lieutenant Johnson. How was Lieutenant Johnson?
Huh?
How was Lieutenant Johnson?
Who?
Do you remember Lieutenant Johnson? Lieutenant Johnson?
No, he wasn't with us long.
Okay. A 19-year-old shaved tail just out of OCS. Oddly, Sergeant Rupert was still with us, and Sergeant Whalen, the two people who I had thought would be transferred first. Some of the squad and section leaders were also transferred out, but luckily we still had Sergeant Flood. How was Sergeant Flood?
Right.
Flood.
Yeah, he was young. He was young.
Good guy?
Yeah,
Good.
Staff Sergeant.
I then noted that there was no call for reveille or retreat. As a matter of fact, all the training has ceased as of 2 weeks. This was the end of our regular Army garrison life. No more parades, inspections, training exercises, or strict regimentation and central control of our activities. We were now entering a phase where we'd be subject to and controlled by other sources and conditions, namely a combat-oriented situation where there's little room for mistakes. One's life depended on the person next to you and your adaptability to its rigorous and harsh reality.
25.
What's taking place now is the division prepared to leave. We're a million tasks to be taken care of. Consequently, remaining non-coms would be going through the barracks looking for bodies to perform their sundry details. Everything was in a high state of confusion, just as the informational meeting periodically to keep us informed. I asked Larson if there's any passes given out. He looked at me and smiled and explained, they were giving them out if you're lucky enough to escape the work details they had flying around. We went to breakfast. I felt comfortable with the informality of it. Fink and Lape sat at the table and we discussed our new relationship. I told Fink I was pleased that he was the squad leader and I would not miss Baker. I turned to Lape and laughingly told him I would swap the tripod for the receiver. I told Lape even though he was a bit eccentric and pokey, he was transferred from the ASTP, and I always thought of him as somewhat a bookworm, as he was always trying reading whenever he got the opportunity. He had told us when we first met that he wanted to be a mechanical engineer, like his father, and had 2 years of university before he was drafted. His mother was an English teacher at a local high school in New York. He also had an older brother who was a Navy pilot off an aircraft carrier in the Pacific. I was told later to find out when we were overseas that his brother was shot down and missing. Fink mentioned Spasta and Gaffney told me to try to put up with them until they got transferred out. He also mentioned that I got pretty close to getting a squad of my own, but at the moment, Captain Drewler filled the vacancy with the corporal being transferred in. I told him I did not matter and that I would just as soon stay in the old squad. He also told me that our old equipment had been turned in and that we'll be installing new equipment when we arrived overseas. He mentioned what Larson had alluded to, getting snatched for a work detail. He said it was the best to keep out of the company area and not hang around the barracks or the day room. And since they were not having head counts, as they left it up to platoon leaders and non-coms to keep track of their men, it behooved everyone to stay clear as much as possible. So if they seen you wandering around, they'd find you something to do.
Yeah. Well, see, when we left as a division. We didn't leave as individuals. We were overseas easy because we were people all summer.
Okay.
So when we were over the 75th.
Okay.
And we stayed over the 75th by long.
All right.
Till the end of the war.
You stayed with the 75th to the end?
Huh?
You stayed with the 75th to the end?
Yeah. Well, I was in that outfit. Yeah.
So you were in the 75th Infantry?
75th. There was a division. That's 36,000 men in there.
36,000 men. Was the division broken up into smaller sections?
In the what?
Was the 75th Infantry, which had 36,000 men, was the division broken up into smaller sections?
No, it was a unit, 75th Division. They went overseas, they come back as
So that's what you're in, the 75th?
I was in the 75th. I was lucky because we used those guys go over. Like Goki was at the hospital, and he picked us up overseas. He didn't come back with us, he came back with another outfit, and he didn't know anybody.
Okay.
But we were in the 75th Division, we stayed in that unit until the war was over.
Okay.
Double nickel.
As we're leaving the mess hall, Sergeant Flood got my attention and stated he wanted to see me in the orderly room in a few minutes. Fink winked at me and said, "Gotcha," smiled and walked away. I walked back to the barracks to put some of my furlough equipment back to my footlocker and took a fleeting glance at the picture of Anne. I stuck it in the back of my wallet and headed for the orderly room to learn of my fate. Sergeant Flood was alone in the orderly room and greeted me warmly and asked me how the furlough was. I said it was great, but I did not elaborate too much on it. He understood and came right to the point. He wanted me to do some more inventory work, similar to what I'd done before. He also said it would entail only day work from 1,000 to 1,600 hours, for the next 2 weeks. Also, an overnight passes would be available, conditions permitting. They would commence at 1,700 hours daily. I was just delighted to hear the good news and told Sergeant Flood I'd do a good job for him. He said I would start the next morning and that there are 5 additional men assigned to aid me in completing the inventory. Sergeant Flood also stating that I'd be free of all details for the duration of our time at camp. The word was out that I was on special assignment not to be giving any work or work detail. I thanked him and then complimented him that he had almost got me a couple of stripes, 3 to be exact. He was referring to a squad leader, opening that Fink spoke. I smiled, thanked him again, and I left the orderly room. I could not wait to tell Ann of our good fortune. The overnight passes, but then realized I would have to wait into 2,100 hours. I returned to the barracks to mull over all that happened since I got back. A short while later, Fink and Larson entered the barracks and asked me if I wanted to join them in the PX. I commented that the PX would not be open until after the retreat. They both smiled and told me to get with it. Naturally, there was no retreat, and the PX was open all day.
18 minutes.
We joked about it and how much I missed since I was on furlough, and I'd better get with it. We sat and talked about various subjects while being drowned out by the music blasting on the jukebox. I had known Fink was also an ASTP, being drafted while attending local college in Indiana, getting into the ASTP and finally being transferred here. He took it all in good spirits and was not bitter or antagonistic about any of it. He made a good squad leader, and I consider myself to be rid of Sergeant Baker.
And Finky.
I was Baker.
Yeah, he got killed.
What could you tell me about Sergeant Baker?
Got killed overseas.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Too anxious.
Wow. Okay. Fink was not pretentious like the majority of the people out of ASTP or the Air Corps. He did not travel in a little clique, but commingled with everybody, not showing particularly discrimination toward any one particular group or person. He was intelligent but not ostentatious, possessed much common sense, and was calm and cool under pressure. All in all, he made a good squad leader, and perhaps more if the given opportunity. It was like most unfortunate that he was able to be one of our first fatalities when we went into combat. Larson, on the other, was older than most of us and the rest of the platoon, and had got into the draft by a hairbreadth in technicality. He had 2 small children and had been married for 5 or 6 years before being drafted. Larson was good-natured Swede who made friends easily, took everyone in stride, and did not complain, and was a good soldier. As there was no longer a routine and a pattern in our existence in camp, time was beginning to hang heavy on us. I was thankful for the work day detail aside and afforded me something to do and make my time go by more smoothly. I thought it rather ironic that I was trying to consume time here at the camp, and when I was with Ann, time seemed to whisk by. It appeared that we were always fighting the clock then. I spent some time in the day room writing a letter home, even though I had just left there a little week ago. I did not mention our overseas assignment, and I certainly did not say anything relative to Ann and me. Mother and Sally knew nothing of her existence, and I thought of what a shock it would be to present them if I said I was going to marry somebody. Better left unsaid, and to the future date, I hope. It was now 2,100 hours, and I walked over to the PX to call Ann and make arrangements to see her once again. When she answered the phone, I felt a sensation of delight and endearment to hear her pleasant voice again. I told her briefly what has happened and then asked her if I could see her in the near future. At first she did not quite understand what I was saying, but I elaborated it further and she was pleasantly pleased and delighted. I informed her that Wednesday looked pretty definite and I did not call her that night. It meant that I would meet her at the bus station around 1800 hours. She was excited to see me and started that she missed me something terrible. We spoke for a few minutes longer. As we concluded our conversation.
14.
She repeated that she loved me and missed me. I told her I missed her and that I loved her very much. After breakfast the next morning, I waited around the barracks until 9:30 hours. Then walked over to the supply room. What's that?
War stories.
You wrote them. You wrote them.
Well, I'm writing that. I lived it, yeah.
You did a great job writing. The words flow.
Huh?
The words flow very smoothly. They're very nice. They're very nice conjoining sentences.
What?
You write very nice. It's very easy to read and comprehend and understand. You did a great job on this 900-page book. How long did it take you to write it?
About a month.
What?
A month.
And how did you first write it?
Wrote it in pencil, longhand. And then I got the yellow paper with the lines on it, and I printed it then. And then I took it to the guy on
I thought
copycat, and
I thought your next step was on a word processor.
No.
I thought you took it.
Oh, well, I had the word processor. I used that, yeah.
You used it so much, I looked at it.
The key numbers were
your
gone.
keys were completely gone.
Yeah.
You really gave it a good workout.
So that's the only one I use. I don't know having one.
Never seen something like that. Okay, so after you did on a word processor, what'd you do?
Do what?
After you got on the word processor, then what was your next step?
At home?
With the book, you have it on a word processor now.
I mean how I wrote the book?
You wrote the book longhand on yellow tablets, and then you used your word processor to
I typed it out, 2 fingers,
and
yeah.
now 2 fingers.
Yeah.
Oh my God, your fingers must have been very active. And then what'd you do with it then?
What?
What was the third step? Yellow tablets, word processor, then what?
And I took it down to the copycat, he charged me $175 to get it printed.
And how many books did you print?
5.
And where are the 5?
Good story.
Here's one.
Yeah, that's the only one I know.
I think you sent one to your brother and your sister.
Huh? Yeah.
So that would be 3, that'd be 4. And Tommy up north
I
has one.
didn't give it to any friends. I didn't give nobody from school or nothing. It was all relatives.
Well, you did a great job on the book. You want me to continue reading, or you want to read
Go
something?
ahead.
We talked a while, and he filled. After breakfast the next morning, I waited around the barracks until 9:30 hours, then walked over to the supply room for my work detail. There was no one there except Sergeant Henderson. How was Sergeant Henderson?
He's a young guy.
Was he a good guy?
Well, he's just new in the service.
The supply sergeant. We talked a while, and he filled me in on the nature of what we had to do. It seemed that the division was not leaving anything behind. The orders were to leave a broom-clean camp with all the equipment, ordnance, and supplies shipped out. This entailed making a record of every item in the camp in triplicate, and after that was created, labeled, and shipped out. Naturally, our segment of this gigantic undertaking was limited to the supply room. Other teams would cover the rest of the camp. Sergeant Flood came in and was pleased that I was already there, ready and eager to get started. He explained what my duties were and that we were assigned to. Shortly thereafter, the rest of the detail filtered into the supply room. Their faces were unfamiliar, as they're all from headquarters company. They appeared intelligent and motivated. I could not foresee a problem with any of them. In addition to 5 headquarters people, I discovered there was also 5 prisoners of war detailed to this assignment. Prisoners of war, will those be Germans?
Yeah,
So the Germans were going to help you.
yeah.
Were they pretty good guys?
Well, they were screened.
But did you get along with them?
Yeah, they weren't despised or nothing. They wanted to live here. They didn't want to go home.
All young kids?
19, 20, 21. No, the older guy was 35.
There was also a problem. Since they all had a good grasp on the English language, we could briefly get acquainted, then proceeded to our work area. It was much like our last detail, and has brought us back to memories of my days spent in the department store. The work was familiar, with one exception. I was not accustomed to overseeing such a large contingent of people. The headquarters crew would make up the actual recording and the log of their findings, and the PWs would do the actual work of moving equipment around and putting into large crates. My task entitled watching over the entire operation and offering assistance whenever the situation arose. So you're putting all the contents of this camp or barracks into big wooden crates.
Yeah.
What were the size of these wooden crates?
The crates?
How big were they?
Well, I would say about as big as this table.
Big as a pool table.
Yeah. They use a forklift to put them in the truck.
And then where'd you take the crates to?
Huh?
Where'd you put the crates?
In the truck, and they were ready to go overseas with us.
And then from there they went onto a ship?
Yeah. They never used the planes yet.
Yeah. So how many crates were packed?
How big what?
How many crates were packed?
Like this?
Yeah.
Oh, probably 200. That's for the whole division.
Wow, that's a lot of crates. That's a lot of crates. It was much like the last detail, brought back memories. My task entailed watching over the entire operation and offering assistance whenever the situation arose. The first day went smoothly, and I consider myself to have such a conscientious and dedicated work crew, including the POWs. We finished before 1600 hours and we're a little bit ahead of schedule. I went back to the barracks, showered, and waited until chow. It seems strange not to be regimented in every aspect of our lives as we had been for the previous 6 months when we first came here. It brought to my mind the time at Camp Upton, and my special assignment there was while waiting a shipment to Lachlan. Looking back at it, it seemed such as a long time ago, as much as has happened in the interim. Best of all, I had met Anne, which opened up an entire new life for me. I could never conceive of a new life without her now. I wondered how I had existed and for what purpose. In a way, this new life, or its concept, made me extremely vulnerable as I acquired new emotions and feelings that I never knew existed before. And what was even more frightening, I had someone I cared for a great deal and wanted nothing to harm her in any way. They made me vulnerable in many ways, and I only hope that I can sustain my fortitude. That night after chow, I went to the movies with Leip and Larson, and later went to the PX to listen to the music and chat about our future. As we talked, I came to the realization that Leip was the weakest link as far as the makeup of our squad was concerned. Granted, he was intelligent. Good night, folks. Take care. Nice seeing you. Nice seeing you.
Night.
Good night. Nice seeing you. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Granted, intelligent, dedicated, but there was something. There's something about him that smoked in a concept.
What was that?
How many minutes?
4.
Didn't smoke in a concept. He did not belong in the military, much less a combat.
Rape?
Yeah, what about Lape? Tell us about Donald Lape.
He had no police cars. His both fathers were lawyers. He was going to law school.
What happened to Donald Lape?
He got killed. Remember when he got broke his leg right back to him. I wrote to his mother, never remember?
Yeah, I know, but tell me how he got killed.
Molly Lape, yeah.
What happened to Lape? How did he get killed?
Huh?
How did Lape get killed?
We were behind a brick wall. I was trying to shout. I said, Lape, put your arms over your head and duck your head. And he didn't do that. He got his head, he wanted to see what was going on the other side. And he picked his head up and he got an artillery shell coming. Whacked him right here, took his head off.
Did you get his dog tag?
Oh, yeah, that's the dog tags, yeah.
Did you send him to his mother?
I wrote his mother and everything, yeah. But I felt bad because she's thinking, what the hell, if he got killed and you were next to him, what happened to you?
Well, that's not... Did Lape's mother write back to you? Did Lape's mother write back to you?
Oh, yeah, we wrote almost 2 years.
And the ironic story of that, Donald Lape, he was a young man and he had a younger brother. His younger brother was not old enough to be drafted. And if you fast forward 40 or 50 years, Lape's younger brother lived only 2 miles from where you lived. You both didn't know it.
Now, where did I live then?
When you lived in Florida, Lape's brother lived 2 miles from where you lived. And in the Lape's brother's obituary, the brother, he just died a few years ago at I think like 90 or 91. He mentioned his brother Donald Lape died during World War II.
During the Battle of the Bulge.
During the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah.
What an ironic story.
Yeah.
What an ironic story. So Donald Lape's brother, younger brother, lived next to you within 2 miles for 40 years and we didn't even know it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it sounds like Donald Lape was a nice guy.
Yeah, it does.
The next day progressed even better than the first day of our detail, and I was excited and looking forward to my pass that night. I had talked to Sergeant Flood and that morning regarding the pass. He assured me that he would be no problem, but to be in by 800 hours. I laughingly told him it was a little too late for me to, and that I would be on one bus from Owensboro to catch about 6 hours sleep and then raring to go in the morning. He smiled, patted me on the arm and said to look out or I'll be marrying that girl. He was not too far afield in his assumption about the situation. As the bus pulled into the station, I spotted Ann's car. When she saw the bus arriving, she immediately stepped out of the car. I hugged her tightly and told her how good it was to see her again. She looked dazzling and very inviting, as wearing a yellow knit sweater with a tan skirt and a brown pumps. She always dressed stunningly, but not pretentiously, and she would have a flair of color combinations which heightened and exalted her beauty immensely. I would never see her wear anything.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Time is running out. Time is running out.
So we're going to pick it up here. the next